His Royal Highness the Prince Charles is yet another man clearly suffering from messianic delusions. In an extremely bizarre interview Prince Charles gave to an American documentary crew, he failed to acknowledge his constitutional responsibilities, preferring to adopt the delusional language of a cult leader. He stated, "I can only somehow imagine that I find myself being born into this position for a purpose. That purpose is to save the planet and the whole of humanity." Charles makes it quite clear that he feels it is his responsibility to bring to the common man an holistic understanding of the nature of the world and the universe as living entities. He feels personally compelled to ensure that there is never an opportunity for his children or grandchildren to pose the question, why the hell didn't you do something about this? Charles is not saying that he wants to contribute and participate in the work of others to the betterment of humanity and the planet, but is clearly interpreting his role to be that of the new Messiah. It is apparent that Charles, like so many others born into positions of privilege and influence, clearly feels that his elevated status transcends mere physical wealth and fabricated social standing, but is resultant of divine intervention and intent. Prince Charles, the great humanitarian, saviour of the common man and guardian of the planet, is no different from the host of messianic and cult leaders that force their way into the greater public consciousness. And like all of those, he is no less of a narcissist and a hypocrite. A huge proponent of the green agenda and controls for others, it does not seem that His Royal Highness feels personally compelled to reduce his own so-called carbon footprint. This would of course necessitate dismantling the huge contingency of employees, residences, vehicles, aircraft, hangers-on, etc. Charles is just one of a multitude of divinely inspired and completely delusional individuals who espouse this sort of nonsense. We are currently witnessing the activities of Saint Angelina Jolie. Jolie is touring the globe, bestowing her messianic words of wisdom with a gusto that makes Mother Teresa look like a heroin-dealing crack-hoe who wasted her life pimping out nuns to French sailors. A true Messiah, if there ever were such a person, is of course someone that has risen from a bedrock of poverty and lowest of social station, and whom, as a result of divine intervention, has become a leader of men and the saviour of the ignorant and the fallen, or similar such circumstances. There are no shortage of these, and a quick look at the many successful cults, pseudo-religious sects and self-help gurus prevalent in society is not only an indication that people are looking for a leader to follow, but that they are willing to pay handsomely for the privilege. These saviours may have a few thousand or even tens of thousands of followers. Followers recruited from the ranks of the gullible, people that truly believe that their saviour will grant them eternal salvation for just as long as they are willing to bestow them with large amounts of adulation and fiat currency. However, His Royal Bigness, the Prince Charles, will one day mount the throne of the UK and Commonwealth, and that bothers me. Are we going to witness a forelock-tugging acquiescence to his delusional doctrines? Will we have to suffer his increasingly exaggerated and delusional claims of universal wisdom, pseudoscience, or even the occasional prophecy or two? Will he, like other self-proclaimed saviours, finally lose the plot, retreat into semi-isolation and turn Buckingham Palace into a UK version of the Temple of Jonestown? A shrine crammed with adoring celebrants, happy to surrender their material wealth and live the rest of their lives eating nothing but organic vegetables and drinking their own urine, until that fateful day they are asked to drink the Kool-Aid. Well, if it saves us from the madness that is Prince Charles, then all I can really say is, long live the Queen.
Okay, following on from that piece about Prince Charles and his Messiah complex, I'm joined by Dave Eden, who's going to give us some of his thoughts on the subject. I know you've had quite an extensive psychological training, so maybe you could give us some insights from that and your personal insights, of course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. I have studied psychology for a number of years. Went through the mill on that. More of a journey of self-discovery with no answers. So it tells you a lot about psychology, doesn't it? I mean, I last studied it. I mean, when I finally finished all my studies was 1999. So everything that I knew then doesn't seem to apply now anyway. So, but it's an interesting thing. I think you could see there from what I said about Prince Charles, and I know I did say at the end of it, you know, well, long live the Queen. You know, I'm not a royalist. I don't really believe in any of that. Any of these people should have the status that they have, or the positions or control that they have. But I'm a little bit more concerned about Prince Charles and the statements that he made. Here's a man that's been born into wealth. He's been born into status, although be artificial status, and not satisfied with that. He seems to think that it's his role. It's his role and his role alone to save humanity and to save the planet. And very, very clear indications from his statements, really, that he is suffering from some form of Messiah complex, and that concerns me. And although that piece was tongue-in-cheek, a lot of it, we do see this. I mean, we made reference to Angelina Jolie, and
yeah, these people are elevated to such a position that they eventually believe that they're this.
Yeah, well, they do, and I mean, I have to ask myself, well, what is Jolie doing? Here she is. She's got this profile. She's going around the world, and she's espousing these wise words of wisdom. Again, from a very strong position, a position of living in luxury, a position of having adequate funding, and she's already adored by millions, and she's using that position to influence
for what,
others.
Though? That's the question, isn't it? And what's she adored for?
Making a few crappy movies,
well,
actually.
Yeah, I mean, where's the spiritual element in what she's achieved?
Well, none whatsoever.
Throughout her career.
It's all fantasy, isn't it? It's all fantasy, and people like to escape into fantasy.
Yeah. But mistaking this with spirituality, though, that there's some higher meaning of her existence.
And I think that's what I said about the little bit about Mother Teresa. She's an individual that I've got a lot of respect for, a woman that worked for humanity in the slums of Calcutta, and she achieved what she achieved without apparently any ego. And I think this is the difference. They reckon that as many as 1 in 10 people suffer some level of Messiah complex, although it's sort of not really being diagnosable. It's very low key, and it's something that we see in every sort of walk of life. From as you and I have previously discussed, in even within relationships, and that control factor. And one person being in a relationship, seeing themselves as the saviour of the other person. Yeah,
the codependent relationship. Generally in alcoholic or drug abuse situations where you'll get the saviour victim dynamic going on. So it is really inherent in humanity, I think, the desire to save and the desire to excuse me, to lead into the light. So be it.
but that desire to do that, if done altruistically, is a positive quality.
Yeah.
It's when we get beyond that altruistic stage where we're doing it out of ego, we're doing it for recognition, we're doing it for control, and also, so sadly, what we see a great deal now is for monetary gain. They want to monetize that. Not only do they want to be seen as people's saviours, they want to be seen as people's saviours that can live in luxury and are rewarded for their efforts in fiat currency. And we see an awful lot of that, whether it's through organisations like the churches, the evangelical churches in America, mainly in America. We don't get so many of them over here. I've watched a few programs on that, the snake handlers, and you see people being brought up into a state of hysteria, into a frenzy, whether it's the faith healers or whether it's the snake handlers or something like that. And these are all techniques that are used in hypnotism, the so-called trance. No state of trance actually exists, but it only exists if you believe it exists. And this is what they're using. And again, at the end of that is generally some monetary contribution, and for that contribution, your soul is saved. And I think it's a natural thing that people are looking. People are looking for something other. We find it very difficult to believe that we are, as ourselves, as an entity, we are all that there is.
That we are enough, I think, is the big one, really, isn't it? I mean, we look to other people to fulfil us, and I think that's when we'll give our give our attention and everything to somebody that is promising to fulfill our spiritual desires, or even our, you know, kind of basest desires, or whoever somebody's offering that, we're gonna look for it to be satiated, aren't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's all part of ego, and I mean, you know, it'd be ridiculous. I always find it quite amusing when people say, "Well, I haven't got an ego."
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you not got an ego, well, why did you bother getting dressed this morning?
Yeah.
Then, you know,
we need ego to survive.
Why have you just engaged me in a conversation where you told me you haven't got an ego? Is it important that I look at you and I judge you on the fact that you haven't got an ego? And it's, you know, I find all that quite amusing. And there is everything. We need people to bear witness to us. I mean, you know, sometimes maybe a bit cynically, I look at that. Maybe that's one of the reasons for marriage. We need people. We need family. We need somebody to bear witness to us and to our achievements and to our life. And on a greater scale, we do need that societal recognition. And I think one of the things that we're taught from very early age, right from birth. And getting back to psychology, I mean, you know, there's an overriding principle in psychology, and that is one of compliance. And as a species, we are naturally compliant. Although we might think we're not sometimes, we are naturally compliant. You know, we're brought into the world. We can go along, you know, we can get a little bit airy-fairy and look at existentialism. We become a product of our environment. We eventually leave that environment when we create our own essence and our own environment. You know, at that point we can believe, you know, I am what I am. But we are still compliant to the rules of society. You know, we drive on the correct side of the road. We treat people with respect, and we are still compliant. There are expectations in society that we feel that we have to meet, and we will temper that generally very often to the company that we're in. And in a group situation, we will find ourselves either sort of silently acquiescing to what people have said, or even openly stating that we agree to them, even if we didn't in the first place. And it's this sort of thing that these people with the Messiah complex prey on, because they know that's what people want to do. That they know what those people are, and people are principally quite malleable, and that they will go into, you know, you and I have discussed this before, the type 1 and type 2 thinking, or type A and type B thinking. And you know, there was a lady in here earlier on, and I was discussing this with her, and I asked a couple of simple questions. You know, what's 2 and 2 or 4? Then I asked her calculations, what's 26 times 17 or whatever it was. And instead of stopping to think about it and say, oh, hang on a minute, I don't know, I've now got to engage type 2 thinking. I'm going to have to, you know, look at that and, I don't know. And I think that is something that we do quite readily.
Line of least resistance, isn't it? That we don't.
Yeah, so we believe what was, you know, Ron Seal, you know, it does what it says on the tin. Yeah. Well, exactly, but we do that with everything, don't we? You know, whether we're looking at products, you're packaging on foods, you know, it's organic, it's free range, it's this, but without actually applying any thought. What is their definition of free range? This is it. So on and so forth.
Blind acceptance, isn't it?
And this is where these sort of people get their power from. I mean, we look at at Jimmy Jones and Joneston. 1978, 909 people there that followed him, all eventually ended up drinking the Kool-Aid, which contained suicide. Now, how many of those people really wanted to do that, do you think? Probably not. Probably most of them didn't want to do it, but they did it because they were following the Messiah. The same with David Koresh and the Branch Davidians.
It's a real level of mass hypnotism, isn't it?
Well, it is, but if you look at the various genres that we are on the periphery of, and again, without mentioning any names, you look at the most prominent names within the truth movements or the alternative media, so on and so forth. You can see that the amount of people that follow them, that commit to what they're saying without actually applying any critical thinking to it. And then get down to the bottom of the page and say, oh, hang on, here's the donate button, here's the purchase button. Yeah. This is what they're doing. They're monetizing, and they're relying on people's blind sort of faith and abeyance to who that individual is. Yeah. And they do set themselves up as messiahs. There was an incident not so long ago, I mean, the last 4 or 5 years in America, where a group of people And a small group, you know, maybe 100 to 200 people. It was a maximum group. Now, this guy was very clever because he knew that from where his stance was, the best way to exercise his Messiah complex was to make these people feel that they were inclusive, but they were small enough to know everybody and to be inclusive, but they were also exclusive enough.
Right.
And of course, people have come in, they've sold their houses, they've given up their monetary wealth, they've given up their physical wealth, they've given up basically their freedom, very often compromised relationships to do this. And they believed that they were going to be taken away by the Anunnaki, or whoever it was, were going to come down, fly down on a certain date, that these chosen ones would be taken away. Now, they didn't let people into the group, they didn't let the press, they wouldn't speak to the press, they wouldn't speak to anybody, they're very secretive, because they are the chosen ones. Now, when the day came and it didn't happen, for whatever reason it didn't happen, you know, you would think people would then say, well, hang on a minute, let's really think about what this guy said to us and go through it with a fine-tooth comb and think, well, actually, that's rubbish. How could I believe that? I'm an intelligent, sentient being, how could I ever believe that? But they didn't. They opened their doors to new members. They came up with a reason why it didn't happen.
Yeah, justifying their actions.
Yeah, they spoke to the press. It didn't happen, but we still believe. Because had at that point they'd have said, this doesn't work, this is rubbish, and walked away from it, what were they left with? Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And I think that's what we do. So we follow an individual, and whether it's on a small scale like that, or whether we follow a specific religious doctrine. I mean, we look back to the life of Jesus. Now, I'm not religious, but I don't dispute that he was a real man, and that fundamentally his history is such that he maybe was the son of a carpenter that came from a poor family, but from his teachings and the teachings of the disciples, and if we look at fundamentally what they are, they're basically just
how to be a good human being.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is, isn't it? Yeah.
How to get on in life, and this is it. This is it with an archetype like that. The steps to spiritual enlightenment and to become a teacher, a spiritual teacher, they're all there. You have to take the steps, learn the lessons. Have to live without. You have to, understand principally what being human is about. Whereas you've got somebody like Angelina Jolie or these people, you've got Russell Brand there at the minute doing his thing, and what spiritual lessons have they really had to endure? This is the question, what spiritual lessons have they really had to endure, and what do they really know about themselves?
Well, I mean, I couldn't answer that question.
No, I couldn't either, but it's a question to pose
it's
to
something
them,
that it would be nice to pose it to them, because to me they seem to be very manufactured. They're using their fame and notoriety to install a course of conduct in other people. And let's look at the Scientologists. Exactly the same thing. I mean, you've got some very big name stars that are members of the Scientologists, again donating millions and millions of dollars of their hard-earned money. Well, I say hard-earned money. I don't know how hard it is to pretend to be a superhero while a stuntman does something, but. And so there again, we've got something that's going to draw people in, because X, this person, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Tom Cruise, whoever it is associated with it, therefore it must be good. Yeah. Therefore we should give our money and our time and our patronage to it, and eventually start to adopt and believe in what we're being told without critically questioning it. It's not very complex when you look at it. It really isn't very complex at all. But somebody that's skilled, somebody that recognises that they have this skill, can do so. To an extent, influence over a group of people is not difficult. It really isn't difficult. So long as you can stand there and you can say something with sincerity, and that you can show that you believe in it, and that you offer some very... it doesn't even have to be credible evidence. It just needs to be evidence that is, or information that could be credible, and you can influence a group of people. Yeah. I know from my own situation, and I don't say this in any way that I don't want it to come across in the wrong way. I don't want it to be arrogant or anything like that. However, There are certain movements, again, where people commit to something because they want to believe in the ethos of it, without actually really understanding the ethos of it or the practicalities of it or every aspect of it, because somebody has told them, oh, this, you know, A equals B equals C, and that's what's going to happen. And I sort of been along to a few of these things, and I've done some talks, and I said, well, hang on, what about this? What about that? What about the other? And to an extent, he sort of gained me a bit of an unwelcome reputation as being the antichrist of the Freeman movement, which I'm not. You know, I think people should believe in what they want to believe in, but what I'd say is research it, look at it properly.
Look at it for yourself rather than just believing what you've been told,
but look, you know, whenever I go to any of these things, or whether I see any of these truth movements or alternative media sites and things like that, or as I do with the government, you know, any political party or any organisation, whether it's trade unions or anything, or whether it's the police federation, my attention isn't on what is being said, it's on who's saying it. And it's the dynamic of that person, because beyond what they've said there and then on the stage or at a meeting or something like that, the important thing to me is to go away and research what they've said, but actually to sort of socialise with them and to get to close proximity and know them, because it's at that point you will pick up on what's going on.
True intention.
And you can see that they've got a group of people around them. These people have always got a group of people around them that are sort of controlling access to them and what's been said and what's not been said.
Yeah, and that's been my experience as well with a lot of groups, especially within the Freeman movement. There's always there's your head honcho, and then you've got their crew around them, and they're often inaccessible. You know,
and what happens then is, as a group, you know, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but as the dynamic of that group starts to get larger and larger, you will find somebody that is equally as powerful or has got an equal messiah complex to the person running the group. And because that person becomes quite inaccessible, that other person will then start to make themselves more accessible, and they will give out more information, and there'll be a few loyal to one and loyal to the other, and then you'll see that group split. And this goes on ad infinitum. But somebody that's very skilled at this, like the people that run the independent churches and various other organisations, will tie you in, and they'll tie you in fiscally.
Okay.
And that's where they gather their control from. And because you feel that you're being rewarded, you feel that you're being validated, and often that validation is little more than the fact that you've set up a standing order and that you're paying them every month. But it's so easy to validate somebody.
Yeah, particularly as a lot of these messiahs do to gather their groups, the chosen ones, like the disciples, the chosen ones that have come to make a difference and to change reality. There's a lot of that goes on.
You can see this repetitious pattern. And I mean, even if you look back, you look back historically and you look at the Bible, I have read the Bible because I felt it was my duty to do so. You can even pick it out in there. You can see what's happening there. You can see these control mechanisms and how people are drawn and people are favoured. And it's all about validating. If you can validate an individual, that individual will do anything for you. And I used to do it in managing people. I would look for people that needed certain types of validation against people that could just be left alone to do their job, and so on and so forth. And I found it so much easier to manage a group of people, sometimes quite larger people, by just giving certain individuals a little bit of validation, even where it wasn't necessary. And that brought them into the group. And it kept them in the group, and it kept the group under control, and there was very little conflict, and a great willingness to do what was being asked. And these people are very, very skilled at that. What I don't like is the thing, people that come from a high profile. I mean, Angelina Jolie has just been given a damehood. Why? Mother Teresa, to my knowledge, not until very, very, very late in her life received any recognition.
Yeah.
To my mind, I certainly know which one of them is more value to society, which is the better role model. And I would say, look at the work that Jolie's doing, see if there's any real substance behind it. Is it her that's doing it, or other people that are doing it? What is the purpose behind it before you start committing to the ethos of it? Yeah,
definitely. But I mean, in terms of people with Messiah complexes, really wanted to kind of discuss, you know, their intentions as well. Whether you think that they, you know, they're out to, are they all out to harm, do you think? Or do you think the majority of them really believe in their cause? Or
I think a percentage do believe in their cause. I really do believe that a percentage believe in their cause and they believe in themselves. And so long as other people are quite happy to acquiesce and be subservient to that, there is a potential for some good work to be done. But they still want that recognition, they still want that status, they still want that position. They still want to be rewarded for what they're doing, and if it's not necessarily financially, they want it to be rewarded with levels of respect and adulation. That in itself may be not such a high price to pay for somebody that's genuinely doing some good work. But I would tend to think that people that are that way intended, people that are completely altruistically intended, don't develop a profile anyway.
yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. They wouldn't be looking for any recognition. They just want to do their work, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
You know. So this throws into the really the big question about leadership, doesn't it? And is it required?
You know, I mean, that's an interesting question, and let's take that in a sort of macro situation. I was, for want of a better word, middle management, and there were two distinctive types of leadership. Now I worked with two sergeants, one of them now unfortunately dead, who was one of the nicest guys you've ever met in your life. His team loved him, absolutely loved him. And he didn't manage anybody because he didn't need to manage anybody. And I always used to think to myself, look, if I could be half the man that he is in terms of management, I would be happy. Now my style was very simple, as if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I went into an environment of roads policing, investigating fatal road accidents and so on and so forth. And my attitude was there were people there that had been there many, many, many years, longer than I had, that had gone through the experiential learning circle. I had the rank, that's all I had. I had the rank, some extra training and some supposed knowledge. A very difficult thing, this, to qualify knowledge. Yeah, I'd had some training and some technical expertise, but it did not equate to knowledge. The truth of the matter was, we worked as a team. We just had different roles in that team, but there was no need for me to manage them. Yeah. I never managed anybody because I didn't need to management. They all knew their specific roles, they all knew their jobs, they all did them well, and they did them very competently. And occasionally, you know, because personal, you know, people are different, as I said, you know, occasionally I have to validate one individual more than another because that was part of their personality. But what I did used to see is I used to see people come in and I'm the boss, you know, I'm going to reinvent the wheel. And you would see that they would fail to recognise the skills and abilities of the people around them. Turn up at scene, well, I'm in charge. Well, I never turned up at scene, I was in charge. I used to wait for somebody to say to me, you know, Dave, have you thought about this? Dave, have you done that? And that works on a macro level. And I don't see why that can't work in society. I don't really think there were anything to stop that. If people just respected other people, and respected that each and every one of us has got different attributes, we've got different qualities, we've got different points of view and different skills to bring to the table. And that there is no need to be in charge, for somebody really to be in charge. There is no need to follow anybody. I can't see that it couldn't work. And I think it does work. I think there are communities like that where it does work. And so no, I would say no, there is no need. But we're taught that there's a need from being very young.
Of course.
whether it's our parents, whether it's our teachers, whether it's our boss at work, it's our
the
government.
messiahs.
Yeah, they're all there doing it in some small way. You know, there are a few that stand out, and I have to say, of the few that I can identify and the few that I look at within the various fields of alternative or truth media in the United Kingdom, there are people that I look at and think, well, you know, why aren't people sort of looking at this critically? Why aren't they just seeing this as pure monetisation?
Yeah.
You know, engage some critical thinking. Okay. Don't be led.
All right, thanks very much, Dave.
That's Cheryl, as always.
Cheers.
Pleasure.